Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Special Transit Commission meeting of Monday, the 4th of December 2017 to discuss the City of Ottawa budget for the Transit Commission as well as the introduction of the Equifare. To begin, do we have any declarations of interest? Seeing none. Confirmation of the minutes 25, 8 November 2017. It's carried. Thank you very much. We do have communications in response to inquiries. There had been some desire to lift this, but because this is a special meeting, we require unanimity of all members of committee, and we do have an absence this morning. So in discussing with the public delegations about their desire to speak to this, I think we're going to set up an opportunity to speak to OC Transport Management about their concerns, if that's okay, Mr. Manconi.
We'd be happy to, Mr. Chair.
Perfect, and hopefully that can get addressed before our meeting in January, before the consultations move forward. So item number 1 on the agenda is the 2018 draft operating and capital budgets. And Mr. Manconi, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of Commission. I want to take you through a presentation that highlights the budget and how it was put together. For starters, the budget has built into it all of the transit affordability elements, including the capital contributions, revenue to cost ratio targets, etc. It also includes 2.5% increase to the transit levy as identified by your transit affordability plan, and the prorated share of the estimated 1.3% increase in taxes resulting from growth. The budget is built on a ridership for conventional service of 97.2 million passenger trips and 800,000 on paratranspo. With respect to revenues, there are approximately $195 million for conventional and $2 million for para. And the fare increase has the 2.5% built in, with the exception of the U-Pass, which has a contractual obligation that kicks in on September 1st. And that was per your report that you approved in June of 2016. In terms of the costs and the funding, the overall budget is about $520 million for 2018 that's proposed. Transit operating costs of $409 million. Contribution to reserves of approximately $70 million. There's a small pension deficit of about $200,000 and debt charges of almost $41 million. That's funded from customer fares representing about $197 million, property taxes $285, and other revenues including the provincial gas tax. In terms of how we put forward the budget that meets your targets, that's in front of you today, the target was about $9.8 million, and that gets made up of a base adjustment of about $200,000. The cost to maintain is about $11.9 million. Growth is $2.3 million, and then revenue that gets generated from the increases and other associated things is about $4.6 million, and that brings you to the nets out to the $9.8 million. And the revenue cost ratio, which I remind everyone is a very important target, is at 51.1%. That's up slightly by 0.1% from last year. In terms of the operating budget and the impacts of the opening of the Confederation line, the way this works out is about $33 million are savings with elimination of bus operations. The new costs for operating the Confederation line, that's operators, that's all the costs that go to the maintenance operations and so forth, about $27.7 million. And then there's a slight increase in ridership that we're forecasting of about $1.8 million. And for 2018, that's a half year that we've put in there, so that's $7 million in savings that are built into the 2018 budget. And on the capital side of things, we have everything from bus replacements of worth about $50 million. We have accessibility improvements throughout the transitway of $500,000. Bus stops and shelters, the important things that ensure our customers are taken care of about $3.7. and then improvements to the road network to ensure that transit receives the priority that it is required to improve our service and meet our reliability objectives of about $8.9 million. And then there's technology systems for customer-facing systems and for paratransport of about $1.5 million. The budget also includes the new multi-day pass that Council approved in our report back in 2016 of June, and it creates a multi-day bus pass for consideration as part of your budget today. It's targeted for visitors to Ottawa and residents who need unlimited transit travel, and they're going to be available at our ticket machines at O-Train stations throughout the network. They're going to be available for 3, 5, or 7 days, and they'll roll out in 2018, and we will communicate through our normal customer channels. Those are the fares for the new multi-day passes. And then the other element that's included in the budget, Mr. Chair, is the expansion to growing areas. All the service kicks in December 27th, with the exception of Route 95. It's on December 24th. The new buses have arrived, and there's an operating cost of this that's offset with also customer fares of about $1.8 million, netting to 1.7 as a budget pressure overall. Those are the routes throughout all the growth areas in the city, and the communication for that has started to roll out. And lastly, Mr. Chair, on the agenda today is the new Equifare program. That's a separate report, and it's reflected in the budget, and we'll have a presentation for you when we get to that item. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Excuse me. Thank you very much, Mr. Mincone. Before we take questions from councillors, we do have a number of delegations, and just to ensure that the delegations are aware of everything before they speak, I'm going to hand the chair over to Councillor Kakish to introduce a motion. So this is a motion moved by myself, whereas the Equipass and Equifare programs are provided through the Presto card, and the cost of a Presto card adds an additional burden to low-income users of these fare categories, and whereas the City Treasurer has advised that providing a credit to 2017 Equipass holders equivalent to the cost of a Presto card can be accomplished within the approved 2017 budget, and establishing the price for a new Presto card for Equipass Equifare customers at $0 will not have an impact on the 2018 budget. Therefore, be it resolved that the Transit Commission recommend that Council approve the following: that a credit of $6 to the Presto account of every customer who registered for the Equipass discount in 2017 and who had the discount loaded onto their Presto card and registered their Presto card, and that this credit be funded from within the approved 2017 funding for the Equipass discount. And 2, that the user fees table in the 2018 draft operating budget be amended to provide that the price for a new Presto card for a customer making a new registration for the Equipass or Equifare discount be set at $0, and that this discount from the regular price be funded from within the proposed funding for the Equipass Equifare discounts.
Okay, so that motion's on the table, and we'll go to public delegations, and I'll hand it over back to Chair Blais.
Thank you very much. The first delegation we have is Mr. Robert Croot. Thank you, Mr. Croot, for coming this morning. You have 5 minutes, and I will try to give you a 30-second notice if I have a chance.
Okay. First, I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. When it comes to the services for the disabled, para must be treated as an essential service in the budget. That means sufficient funding. Stop thinking of para as a luxury. When bilingualism was brought in, cost was not considered because the participation of francophones was too important. To the disabled, transportation, para is no different. How important is the participation of the disabled to you? Para must be expanded to provide all daily rides requested 24/7. Presently, many are refused due to the lack of vehicles. I have used para since '95. Since then, I have seen a steady decline in the service. Amalgamation with the resulting expansion and the area served and the aging baby boomer population have all put additional strain on the system. It is, if a spouse has a medical emergency at 4 a.m., there is no way of booking para to follow the ambulance to hospital if one uses a para wheelchair. Recommendation: para is an essential service. It must be available 24/7 for emergencies. Pickup times. When I first started using para for work, I was told by management that we can set our watches by you. One cannot say that today. The window for pickup has been extended that one must book at least 90 minutes ahead of one's appointment time in order to be at that appointment on time. I would not say that is timely, would you? Accessible cabs. On several occasions when I booked an accessible cab for return trips, they were a no-show. For the past year, I have been unable to get a response from the city regarding procedures for no-shows of accessible cabs when booked ahead. Consequently, what are the chances of getting an accessible cab for an emergency? Low-floor OC buses. Currently, many bays for wheelchairs on low-floor buses are occupied by baby carriages, which is their right, and or other wheelchairs. If you cannot get onto a bus or two or three because they are all already filled, what is one to do? Wait for the next or the next? How long should the wheelchair wait? Would you be willing to do so in midwinter? Recommendation: if a low-floor bus cannot accommodate a wheelchair, the OC transport driver must call para for an emergency pickup of the wheelchair at that location. Snow. We cannot deal with para in isolation. As an essential service, we all must deal with the snow clearing. It's the appendix that I've provided with to you. For days after a storm in many areas, the bus stops and intersections leading to bus stops are not plowed well enough to be accessible to wheelchairs, resulting in additional strain on para. Recommendation: all sidewalks, including the intersections, must be plowed properly without leaving ridges in order to accessible wheelchairs can use them. The LRT. If the elevators to the new LRT are not working, what contingency plans have been put in place? We could not learn of any. Will you be carrying the wheelchairs up and down to the landings? Please note, my power chair weighs 300 pounds without me in it. In conclusion, what is the backup plan for para arriving late for pickups? It would appear none. As all units are on the road have GPS, you know just how late the buses are. If a para bus is to be more than 15 minutes late, have a cab sent to that location for the pickup, as Vancouver does. The city has a valuable resource that they should be using. The drivers. It would appear that the expertise is never drawn upon or considered. Their input would be priceless. Safety and maintenance. Are you maintaining and monitoring the safety of the accessible cabs used for para? Many feel as if they have little or no shocks left. If I or the wheelchair are damaged, what are the procedures? Para must be expanded to meet the needs of the growing disabled population. Adding to the situation, the city ever-growing desire to have the population walk longer distances to get to a bus, requiring users to make
Short, I'll give you another 20 seconds here, because
if not 2 or more transfers to get to a rapid transit station, all of which is done in an area with 5 to 6 months of winter. Considering the city's schedule for snow clearing, salt and sanding, what is the pleasure through anyone else with mobility?
thank you very much. Mr. Crew, for coming out. Are there any questions for the delegation? Councillor Wilkinson.
Yeah, most would prefer staff later, but from you said that if there's a medical emergency in the middle of the night, the OC transfer para should come. You have to call an ambulance at that time. Our bus drivers
This
are
is,
not
yeah,
trained.
but the ambulances can't take a wheelchair. If
But they
somebody's
take
going,
the
if
person
somebody's
on a
going with
stretcher.
it's going with the person in the ambulance, that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, but they can take the person in a stretcher, so they don't need a...
We're not talking about the person in the ambulance, we're talking with the family
Councillor,
members
Mr.
going with
Clerk,
them.
I appreciate you're trying to answer the question, but let's keep it in the form of a question and an answer, not a debate if we could.
Well, that's why I'm trying to explain what I'm referring to.
That's fair.
And I'm referring to the person that's going with the person in the ambulance.
Yeah, they can
Okay,
go
and
in it.
they're in a chair. Okay? That's what I'm referring to.
Okay, I understand.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Kakish has a question for staff.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Crew, for your presentation as well. And I, along with Councillor Leeper and Wilkinson and Milner last year, as you know, formed a working group on paratransport, and I think there's been several improvements that have been struck, as well as the eligibility criteria for people with mental disabilities as well. And there's certainly been lots of investments, and I feel like a lot of the time it's depicted that paratransport is sort of forgotten, but the reality is I think we've made a lot of investments in paratransport over the last little while, and some other things to come as well in terms of online bookings in the future. So I'd like staff to provide a bit of an update of the things that we've been doing and working on the paratransport front to make that experience better for those riders as well.
Thank you, Councillor. I was just taking notes of the list. I think many of the issues have been certainly looked at and implemented. Everything from you look at the service that's been brought in-house. It used to go out for contract every 5 years. That would create a great instability, not only in the organization, but also to our customers. We have 100% low-floor vehicles now. The new vehicles, you spent $13 million on those. Those are now considered sort of best in class. And that came from customer feedback in terms of the suspension ride and the lifts and so forth. They no longer are on display for everybody when they're being lifted into the vehicle. We've automated a lot of our systems. We've done consultation with the groups. You added 12,000 new trips through the contract that we negotiated. You'll recall you approved a strategy on contract negotiations with our external provider. You added money to the budget 2 years ago for more trips. Our refusal rate is at one of the all-time lows. We've actually had some days when we've had no refusals for next day bookings. I continue to remind all our customers that we think we can do a lot of improvements with dialogue, even on top of all the existing things that we've done. And online booking is one of those things that will free up capacity. Having said that, I think the customer has made some very good suggestions and recommendations. I'm happy to meet with them offline. Things like being stranded in the middle of the night. I can assure you that 911, all emergency services have our backdoor numbers. They can call our control center, and if they need a vehicle for dispatch out to any situation, they will get to us, and we have done that both with normal buses and with our para fleet. And then I actually like some of the suggestions about do we need a protocol in the event of an emergency during a snowstorm and so forth. I'm happy to ask Troy and his team to look at that in terms of what other agencies are doing. We're wide open for suggestions and always looking to improvements. And there have been investments in para by this council in the millions of dollars, and we have added many, many more trips.
Thank you for that clarification. I think it was important to outline and highlight those things because I'm sure there's always improvements that can be made to the system, but I think it's also important to highlight some of the improvements and investments that have been made. To Mr. Crute, the point that you brought up with regards to taxis and their safety, or are they meeting those standards, can you elaborate on that a bit in terms of, is there any specific incidents? And I'll ask staff a question about that in terms of how we follow up or continue to monitor that they are meeting those expectations to the taxis that we contract out to do the work.
Personally, I feel that the floors of the cabs now are not level. There's a bend in the middle of the floor. That puts more strain on the back of the wheelchair, and it's hard on the motors because you're stationary. In from riding in a lot of the cabs, they do a lot of mileage. And when they're cut away, that mileage is even more pronounced on the back of the van because you're driving over the rear wheels. To me, it feels like there has to be more maintenance done for the shocks to make sure that they are in proper running order. If anybody has ever had back problems and they're sitting in a vehicle that keeps bouncing all over the road, you will really notice it.
And is this something you experience regularly in the cabs, or is it?
I
one-offs, or-
would have to say yes.
Okay. Does staff have any comment on that at this point?
We will absolutely work with the customer. What we need is a vehicle number, and I know that Mr. Hanif and Coventry Connections are very focused on ensuring that they provide the best vehicles they can, because we give them millions of dollars and there are high standards that are built in the contract. Vehicle number, a date of the trip, and or if you want to share with us any details, we'll go out and look at the vehicle firsthand with you and with Coventry Connections. We'll make sure there's no issues.
And when those vehicles are retrofitted, do we do the similar experience that we do with the new paratransport fleet, for example, where we test them out and we have those certain standards to ensure the comfortable standards that for the experience of riders?
We have not done that, but I'm happy to explore with Coventry Connection how we can get some riders engaged in that discussion and what the life cycle are for their vehicles and so forth. It is a private business, so we have to be careful with that in terms of what our contractual rights are. Mm-hmm. But I know that Coventry is very quick to respond whenever there is any incident. And they are required to give Mr. Charter a full report, and we have the right to look into those incidents.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Kreutz.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eglai for Mr. Groot.
Actually, it's a quick question to staff about one of the comments made. The delegation raised the issue around the LRT stations and the elevators. I understood that we had a redundancy program built in to the elevators that we're installing, so maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, and if not, you can explain what the system is and how we intend to deal with just the sort of situation raised by the delegation.
Yes, I can assure you, Councillor, that you have one of the highest standards in the industry, double elevators everywhere. There was one station that didn't. Mr. Scrimger's fixing that issue. The other thing is on top of the double elevator, so there's redundancy, there are call buttons and also emergency stations in the event that we can see everything in the elevators also, that we would deploy resources to assist if there's any instances there. But every single station will have double elevators.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cloutier.
Thank you, Chair. Just one of the comments, as part of the exploring online booking for paratransport, I know the paratransport vehicles, I think, have GPS that you could look at, but it's a tremendous benefit to users of OC Transport that we know when the bus is coming. Will users have that ability to see where their vehicle is?
Mr. Chair, it's something that we have been looking at. It's not available in the current version of the software. Right now, a customer who wanted to know exactly when their minibus would arrive would call to the control center, who would look it up and interpret the information that they have. We have been looking at making that information more available, but it's much more complex to do it with the kind of service that paratransport runs than it is with the conventional OC Transport service. So we're continuing to look that way, and every couple of years we get software updates from the supplier of our software, and they're very customer focused. So we'll be watching for that.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr.
Can I respond to that last comment?
Unfortunately, we don't do a back and forth, unfortunately, but
Is just a clarification then? Can I use it as a clarification?
I'm being very lenient this morning. I woke up on the right side of the bed, so
We can call, but that's only after 30 minutes. So in other words, you're already late past the pickup time. That was my comment. Thank you.
appreciate your presentation this morning, Mr. Crew. Thank you very much. Caitlin Thibault from Harmony House and Sylvie Amazero from Cowie, please. Thank you very much, ladies, and I'll try to give you a 30-second or 1-minute warning when it's time to wrap up.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the Transit Commission. My name is Kate Thibault. I'm the housing support worker at Harmony House, which is a shelter for women and children who are survivors of violence. I'm joined today by Sylvie Amizero, who's a volunteer with the City to Include All Women initiative, COWI. She will also be speaking in French, so please have your headphones ready. We are here today representing the organizations who are engaged in a network called Women Working Together to Reduce Poverty, MAMAWay. Les femmes combattent ensemble la pauvreté. We are community agencies and organizations who see the many ways that women experience poverty in our city. Among them are women who are Indigenous, racialized, immigrant, criminalized, and living with disabilities. We wish to work with you to address the barriers that keep these women and their families in poverty. You will have received and will find attached our letter to City Council bringing to your attention what we asked to be addressed in the 2018 city budget. Given that Ottawa's regular transit fares are one of the highest of Canadian cities, we are pleased that the Equifare is in the budget. We ask that free Presto cards be given to residents who are eligible for Equifare and Equipass. In my work with women living in shelters, we know how important this is. It takes a tremendous amount of courage to leave a situation of abuse, and these women rely on public transit to access essential services and supports that enable them to begin rebuilding their lives. Our clientele includes not only those living in shelters, but also ex-residents living throughout the city who, without access to affordable public transit, face isolation and potential re-victimization. The Equipass was one important step taken last year, and we applaud you for that. However, for many women with whom we work, they cannot afford a monthly pass. For that reason, we wish to express our support for the Equifare single or discount single fare for residents living on low incomes. Sylvie Amizero will now present her concerns in French.
Thank you. Le kit tarif suscite un grand enthousiasme parmi les organismes et les organisations de l'initiative Les femmes combattant la pauvreté ensemble. Pourquoi? De nombreuses femmes vivant dans la pauvreté comptent sur le transport en commun pour répondre à leurs besoins et ceux de leur famille. À titre d'exemple, je connais plusieurs femmes dans la communauté immigrantes qui se sont retrouvées isolées parce qu'elles ne pouvaient pas se payer des frais de transport ou donner la priorité à leurs enfants en utilisant l'argent qu'ils avaient pour payer les frais de transport de ces derniers. Par conséquent, cela limite leur possibilité d'intégration dans la société canadienne. Pour les femmes inuites et des Premières Nations, nouvellement arrivées dans la ville, cela rend leur entrée dans la vie urbaine d'autant plus difficile. Des femmes nous ont témoigné qu'elles marchaient de longues distances la nuit, parfois dans des situations dangereuses, pour ne pas payer des frais élevés de transport. Au cours de la dernière année, seulement une portion de nombre de personnes anticipées ont pris davantage de l'Equipass. C'est en partie parce qu'elles ne peuvent pas se payer un laissez-passer mensuel. Toutefois, nous pensons également que cela vient du fait que les coûts initiaux de la carte Presto et l'exigence d'un chargement de $10 les découragent à utiliser la passe, même si elles sont qualifiées pour l'obtenir. Par conséquent, il reste des fonds non utilisés, financements accordés pour l'Equipass dans le budget municipal de 2017. Nous demandons alors que l'on puise dans ces fonds pour couvrir les frais visant à offrir des cartes Presto gratuites aux personnes qualifiées pour obtenir le kit tarif et l'Equipass en 2018. De plus, nous croyons que l'exigence d'un chargement de $10 est en train d'être supprimée. Nous sommes heureuses d'entendre cela et nous demandons que cela se concrétise. Finalement, nous aimerions que les frais de transport diminuent pour tout le monde, car nous réalisons qu'il y a des personnes vivant juste au-dessus du seuil de faible revenu qui ont de la difficulté à payer les frais de transport en commun. Mais à part cela, nous appuyons les kits tarifs et nous vous demandons, s'il vous plaît, de fournir des cartes Presto gratuites et d'éliminer l'exigence d'un chargement initial. Merci de nous avoir écoutés aujourd'hui comme moyen de réduire la pauvreté chez les femmes de notre ville.
Merci beaucoup pour la présentation. Thank you very much for the presentation. Are there any questions for the delegation? Seeing none, merci encore. Et la prochaine, the next speaker is Mr. Alex Cullen and Roland Dorsey for the Federation of Citizens Associations. So Alex, you're also signed up with Margaret Dunn. Is Margaret here?
Unfortunately, neither Roland nor Margaret can make it today, but they're separate presentations, they're separate organizations.
Sure, so why don't I give you 7.5 minutes?
Well, I'll do one and then do the other, but 7.5, no. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the Commission. My name is Alex Cullen. I'm the chair of the Transportation Committee for the Federation of Citizens Associations. Roland Dorsey is a member of that committee, unfortunately can't make it here today. The Federation of Citizens Associations is an umbrella group representing 43 community associations across Ottawa. We're formed to discuss issues important to our residents, which includes, amongst other things, budgets, taxes, programs that affect the quality of our lives in our neighborhoods. Earlier this year, the FCA, through its Transportation Committee, initiated a review of the 2013 Transportation Master Plan, a supporting document of the city's official plan, which indicates how our cities to grow its transportation system over the next 30 years. It identifies 4 modes of transportation: walking, cycling, public transit, automobiles, sets targets for these modes for 2031 to be accomplished through, amongst other things, budgets. In reviewing this Transportation Master Plan, we in the FCA conducted a survey of our members on the issues important to them, held a workshop with FCA members to analyze and prioritize them, and if we finalized a report, review of the city's Transportation Master Plan and presented it to the city's Transportation Committee earlier in November, which was among our 16 recommendations were a number that are relevant to the city's budget, which is why we're here today. 3 of those recommendations relate specifically to public transit. The city's current Transportation Master Plan sets as a target transit modal since 2011. Transit ridership has declined from 103.5 million rides in 2011 to 96.5 million rides in 2016, a contraction of 6.8% despite a population growth in Ottawa of 5.8% according to the census over the same period. While a number of factors have been identified in contributing to this ridership decline, fare increases in excess of inflation clearly have had an impact on ridership growth. The regular adult monthly bus passes in Ottawa have increased by 21% from 2011 to 2017, while inflation has increased by 8.4%. The FCA does see transit ridership and the public investment in expanding public transit infrastructure as a means of achieving that goal. Certainly, the public investment in light rail is significant, consuming most of the TMP capital expenditures by 2031. Of the nearly $4 billion for all new infrastructure and services contemplated in the TMP, transit-related expenditures account for almost $3 billion, or 3/4 of the TMP expenditures. Of that, nearly $2.4 billion is for LRT. This is a significant public investment in transforming the delivery of transit as the transformation of our existing transitway system to LRT will have a positive effect on transit ridership. But believe the supportive policies to facilitate access to public at $57 was too high, even at 50% of the regular month pass. Few of the 74,000 rate as a community bus pass for folks on ODSP, but however, those whose benefits are well below the SASCAN LICO. This would have been a better level. However, we understand the budget is telling that this fare is being financed by funds unspent by last year's Equipass budget. Be that as it may, the FCA does support efforts to expand the equity fare system for low-income residents in order to increase access. Concerned about the inadequate supply of paratransport for this service. Demand for this. I'll wrap up with this. Demand for this service far exceeds the supply provided by paratransport, leaving many users frustrated by their inability to access this important service when they need it. Last sentence. The FCA believes... Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions, Councillor Leeper?
Alex, just wondering, there are 2 ways of looking at it. This actually is a perception amongst our community associations who have seniors in their communities who access the service and here qualified and registered with paratransport. Your ridership does not reflect that number at all. So there is a gap. Now, I understand, I have to say, definitely we understand that there are efforts made to try and improve the service. But the fact remains, and you hear it constantly, you're going to hear it in the next presentation as well, that the seniors and disabled community out there are frustrated. Not just nibbling at the edges, you need to put in some resources.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers?
We'll be there, Mr. Egley, on Wednesday. The Ottawa Seniors Transportation Committee is a committee sponsored by City Transport staff and City Transportation Services staff. We're no strangers to the Commission, as we made presentations to the Commission on budget issues important to seniors. We appreciate very much the fare-free Seniors Wednesdays that OC Transport provides, and the special discounted monthly Seniors Pass. However, we would be remiss if we did pension plan. Important components of our retirement income have increased by the 2.9% being proposed in this budget. Indeed, since 2011, the seniors' monthly 4%. We are also asking that more resources be provided to paratransport, so that more of the 50,000 plus registered users can access this important service. Many paratransport users are frustrated by their inability of paratransport rides. This is not a meeting that paratransport users cannot access the public transit they need at a level comparable to users of conventional transit. Winter sidewalk maintenance continues to be a major concern for many seniors. Clearly, the presence issued to the attention of the City's Transportation Committee on Wednesday. But we expect OC Transport to do its part to keep the bus stops clear of snow and ice, including the removal of snowbanks that block access to city buses. And lastly, we were city. While we were disappointed with the low take-up of last year's Equipass due to its $57 a month price tag, we are encouraged by the introduction of the $1.75 Equifare for low-income residents. We believe these discounted fares will make public transit...
Yeah, you could have had 7.5 minutes.
Yeah, no, not for two.
Not the first time I'm going to be right today, Alan. Are there any questions for the presenter? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joan. And while he gets you set up, just a reminder, you have 5 minutes, and I'm going to give you a little, don't worry, it won't start until you're ready, and I'll give you a little bit of a wave, around 30 seconds or so.
Most of you will know that. My name's Bessa Whitmore, and I am a member of the CORE Gotta Go campaign team.
Thank you for coming.
So thank you for offering us some time to speak. And, pardon? There we go. We're campaigning, as most of you know, for open, accessible public toilets throughout the city. I would hazard a guess that every person in this room and out, thank you. They're hard to find because there's very little signage, and that's an issue we're raising as well. We need toilets at all, $2 billion LRT, and no public toilets except at the terminus stations is going to be a huge problem for many transit riders. There are no toilets at or near park and ride lots. That $40,000 in capital costs be allocated to the supplier that could provide this service. Quite a distance, wait at the station, catch the bus. It may be another half hour. This could be a matter of an hour's transport, and boy, that's hard on the morning coffee. Montreal. This is an Italian company with a franchise based in Montreal, and these are $40,000. They're waterless, so we don't need, would be routine cleaning, but not would not involve a lot of cost. So public toilet availability is not only a human dignity issue, an indicator of civilization, it's a sound economic strategy. Thank you.
Remind you that in addition to the terminal stations, we actually added bathrooms, and Mr. Manconi, you can remind me, I believe, at Herdman and at Bayview.
That's correct, yes.
And once stage 2 happens, there will be more, and will have washrooms of one form or another.
Yes, and we're very grateful to the council for approving that.
Right. Are there questions for the delegation? Councillor Wilkinson.
Yeah, you said that one, a dry compostable one, all of the stuff.
Yep.
And that include the taxes on it too?
That I don't know.
Just to get an idea of what we're looking at. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Councillor Kluche.
Just a quick question to staff.
Being built on the Confederation line are all inside the fare paid area.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Hélène Nadeau. Hélène, you can begin your 5 minutes whenever you like, and if it looks like you're going to run...
You know, pursuant to the accessibility in seniors. Like I did last year, I want to reiterate our appreciation for the ongoing commitment to accessibility that has been shown by the City Council, and any change to the Accessibility Office could result in lessening the commitment to accessibility. We are pleased that our fears have not come to fruition, like we're seeing some improvement. For example, the city is streamlining and standardizing its approach to seeking the committee's feedback to ensure that accessibility is taken into account at the outset of project. We've also noted that the city has and procedures. As you know, in Ottawa, there's having some form of disability. And we also know that the occurrence of disability rises proportionally with age. And as a society, we are getting older. So opportunity to improve transit accessibility, we know the ability. And we've also noted a number of other initiatives aimed at improving bus stop and shelters, technology system, as well as accessibility-specific initiatives such as we'd like to take this opportunity to highlight several areas where we feel we can continue to provide reliable paratransport by the current public transportation systems. A key feature of a universally accessible transit system is a standardized and integrated fare payment process across all components of the transit system: the bus, O-train, the LRT, and the paratransport. And we also we would like to ensure that all transit stations...
Regarding today, in 2017, I have to allow an hour and a half each way to get to any appointments, anything there, because the front ramps allow people to get on and off the vans easily and faster, except that person increase in vans. Again, we are down those 10 vans when not only should we have the 91, we should have more than 91, because it's very clear that drivers are frustrated, we're frustrated, and it doesn't matter how many emails you send to your city councillor to include the disabled equally in this community. I'd really like the committee to evaluate why you continue to shortchange the disabled community and not provide. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Well, thank you, Carol, for your presentation, and I agree on the online booking comments, and I think that's why it wasn't done the first time, is that we're cognizant that there isn't unanimity within the community that is a
comment that. So I know we haven't moved ahead on it at this point, but we're still considering it. As part of that consideration, segregating or setting aside a certain number of trips so that the full complement isn't online, so that...
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson.
Yeah, you mentioned that the two of the buses...
The problem is, although the refusal rate is down, the buses are packed so that you don't have enough buses to meet the demand. You don't have enough drivers to meet, well, they go hand in hand, to meet more people. And new buses for OC to accommodate the increase in needs for able-bodied. So it's pretty self-evident.
And just explain to us what the timing was like, what it was like for you to get here today, this morning, for 9:30, and what that will look like for you to be able to get back home. Could you just kind of walk?
The person on the vehicle, he had to catch me, by the way, because my wheels came off the ramp again. And I got here, I think, around 9:45, approximately. So, but I was coming from the...
Those that are currently operational?
That is correct.
And are there any long-term plans for the fleet expansion?
The plan that we brought forward to council when we brought the service in-house in, I believe it was 2012 or 2013, was after, I will go back, as the speaker has suggested in history, paratransport has had a rocky road, and it was whenever you put that service out for public tender, you were not getting a lot of respondents to the bids, so much so that in the year that we, the last year of the tender, the market was not prepared to bid. And after the 3.5-year period, the service seemed to be mentioned. You've heard many speakers talk about the importance of the ride. There's a premium with that. We had 81 vehicles, and what we also said was that we would work with to lower their unit costs and drive those savings into more trips. Is the number of trips, and it's not one vehicle for every user. There are you added 12,000 trips last year. You added some money to the budget to enhance trips, and we're looking at efficiencies and how to optimize the trips, so that fuse money into the budget and give staff direction to grow the service.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And just to wrap up on this, can you, if you don't have it, can you provide it maybe at some point before the... Very much for your present... Commissioner Mallow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Carol, for coming. I guess for the staff would be, have we established a performance standard for paratransport? Like, have we made promises, or are we striving towards a performance objective of some sort to delivery, to destination?
Mr. Charter and his team are part of a group that looks at all the best practices, and yes, we have standards and policies and procedures and wait times and so forth, and tools to optimize the service.
For paratransport?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Our on-time performance standard for paratransport is, because it's a door-to-door service in which it is scheduled every single day, and it's a unique schedule every single day. It's a pickup time, and then get them to their location within an hour. So if we were 20 minutes from the time of the requested trip, we would want them to be within their location, half an hour.
Thank you. And I know the effort over the last year has certainly been on trying to eliminate the waste time, I would call them, in the system, right? So a capacity to service your needs. So an hour and a half is what is being used, an hour to benchmark the system. Is an hour acceptable to you?
Never when there's problems. Right. And that's why those of us who've been around a long time, have to allow an hour and a half each way just to be on the safe for extra OC buses. Why not for paratransport? It's an ongoing issue. You took on 2,000
number.
We estimated there could be as many as 2,000. I believe I have the number here. I will look it up for you.
Okay. Carol said that there
on conventional service and on paratransport can use the paratransport card that belongs to the registered customer. We're also working on ways right now to stream our financial action made when they book the trip, have the money deducted when the trip is made, and no longer have to carry cash.
The theme on this, we've just been provided some numbers. I mean, we're refused. I want to try to.
We're discussing a call and have not been able to make a trip at the time they.
So at roughly 1,000 a month, has OC ever taken a look at what would it?
In the morning.
$1.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate you coming this morning. Coalition.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for allowing me in this year's budget plan. So certainly we're grateful that the city's making progress on the extern. An average of 2.5%, I think, is the opposite of the direction we should be headed to. 42 also can offer financial support in their lives. We'd also like to see the city stopping automatically pass cost. So just to go into a little bit more detail, here's a photo from a meeting we held with them. At that time, $8.70 data there showing that in 2008 it was only $2 to ride a bus on OC Transpo.
the fees that are proposed to be charged. But just in terms of what you quoted, the filters are aware of their eligibility and encouraging people to
take on that extra cost through the regular fare system, what would a pass look like?
That information.
Jack, say one.
Is that, which are paid sucking
Of the cost, to reduce the size.
Piece you could.
We had to fund it.
I twist for you this a month ago. Vote and from it, and that I'm hearing you. So not,
And my parent, I'm aware of the cross strike. It isn't just a SME with, and driving to today, and my commenting and existing.
from
First pass, where's Tina? I Lord, there are part of the vehicle section and notice and post without more people with transit with the phone.
In 26.
No.
Generous delegate, so trend, I know that.
Past leadership forecasted fees in 2018 made by the
fees
If where you'd like to see.
Council's constituency.
So the need example like